You need looks and talent to make it in Hollywood, and these classic movie actors had both in spades. From handsome heroes to femme fatales, these are some of the most beautiful people that you'll ever see in black and white. If you were to ask someone to name the most attractive classic movie star they could think of, it's more likely than not that they'll say Marilyn Monroe, perhaps the biggest historical pop culture icon outside of Elvis Presley. Monroe's name and face are still synonymous with sex and beauty. Born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926, Monroe survived a chaotic childhood in which she was raised by 12 different sets of foster parents. She became a model in the late 1940s and established herself as one of the silver screen's biggest female stars the following decade. She was at her best in screwball comedies like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and Some Like It Hot, in which she was much more than just a pretty face. That being said, the scene in The 7-Year Itch that depicts Monroe's dress being blown upward by a subway grate remains one of the most iconic moments in film history.
You might not marry a girl just because she's pretty, but my goodness, doesn't it help?
Monroe was also a tragic figure who dealt with mental illness, drug addiction, and a tumultuous love life that included much publicized relationships with baseball star Joe DiMaggio and playwright Arthur Miller. When her body was found on August 5, 1962, her death was deemed a probable suicide. She was 36 years old. In the years since her death, debate has raged about the exact nature of Monroe's life and career. For many years, she was painted as a victim of the entertainment industry, which critics saw as having sexualized and exploited her. However, those close to the actress, including her friend Amy Green, have been keen to set the record straight. Green claims that Monroe was a canny operator who knew how to use her charm to further her career, and that she was less of a victim than some would suggest. Marlon Brando was one of 20th century cinema's greatest rebels, both on and off screen. In 1953, Brando starred as Johnny Strabler in The Wild One, the classic tale of outlaw motorbike gangs, which was one of the most controversial films of its day. Clad in a leather jacket and cap, striking features, and a standoffish demeanor, Brando was the definition of nihilistic cool. Many parents were panicked by what they saw as the film's potential to morally corrode the nation's youth. Lifted by the glamour of having caused a moral panic, Strabler has arguably set the template for pop culture rebels ever since.
Hey Johnny, what are you rebelling against?
What do you got?
There are many reasons why Marlon Brando was ahead of his time, but his rugged appearance and unfettered emotional performances gave him an edge of sexuality that few Americans had witnessed on screen before. Brando was known for being promiscuous, a reputation which has come to light again in recent years, with revelations of some unexpected alleged affairs with prominent celebrities, including the comedian Richard Pryor. His activism, which in 1973 saw him reject an Oscar in protest of Hollywood's reductive depictions of Native Americans, made him a hero to many, even as he made enemies in the Academy. As he neared the end of his career, Brando was in pretty bad shape. The Godfather showed that he had put on a few pounds, and it only got worse after that. Brando might look like the farthest thing from a sex symbol in The Island of Dr. Moreau, but that doesn't make his earlier appearances in films like On the Waterfront any less smoldering. Even though it's been over 3 decades since Audrey Hepburn died at the age of 63, she remains one of the most beautiful movie stars of all time. Born into an aristocratic family in Brussels on May 4, 1929, Hepburn was raised in the UK, though she spent much of World War II in the Netherlands. Originally a ballet dancer, her career began on Broadway, where she starred in Gigi in 1951 and was instantly recognized as a major talent. Hepburn is known by many for her stunning good looks, but it was her acting abilities that made her an Academy Award contender. Her single Oscar win was for her breakout role in Roman Holiday, which catapulted her to mainstream stardom. Her appearances in Sabrina, The Nun Story, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and Wait Until Dark also received nominations over the next 15 years. Breakfast at Tiffany's in particular resonated with audiences, with Hepburn's black Givenchy dress going on to become become one of the most memorable outfits of the 20th century. Later in life, Hepburn moved away from acting and became known as an effective goodwill ambassador for UNICEF, setting the template in many ways for actor activism today. She died from a rare form of cancer in 1993. Looking back at the era when Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack were in their prime, one could argue that Dean Martin was perhaps the most conventionally good-looking of the legendary entertainment fraternity. However, that would be to overlook the insane fandom that Sinatra enjoyed after first breaking into the music business in the 1930s. His skyrocketing stardom during the 1940s was propelled by his vocal talents, but also in no small part by his striking looks and famous blue eyes that won over millions of teenage girls in the US and beyond. Sinatra's young female audience became known as the Bobby Soxers, hardcore fans who were so enamored with the singer that he had to be escorted by police as he performed around the country. The Bobby Soxers then became Sinatra's loyal cinema audience as he transitioned into Hollywood with a series of acclaimed movie roles. Highlights of Sinatra's film career include 1945's The House I Live In, an anti-bigotry short film for which he received a Special Academy Award, as well as the classic From Here to Eternity in 1953, which earned him the Supporting Actor Oscar. He was nominated again in 1955 for The Man with the Golden Arm, and he remained a prolific presence in cinemas until the 1960s ended. Ingrid Bergman was destined for immortality thanks to her starring role alongside Humphrey Bogart in the 1942 classic romance Casablanca, which is still considered one of the greatest films ever made.
Kiss me. Kiss me as if it were the last time.
The actress, who was born in Stockholm, Sweden on August 29, 1915, made a name for herself in Europe before transferring her talents to Broadway and Hollywood. Bergman's good looks were often deployed in morally upstanding rather than bombshell roles, as Heartbroken Lovers or in The Bells of St. Mary's, a nun. She worked on several movies with Alfred Hitchcock in the 1940s, a period which brought her perhaps her greatest fame. In Bergman's day, actors had many intrusive rules they had to follow on account of their studio contracts, including morality clauses that excluded immodest sexual behavior. In 1950, Bergman was met with a storm of disapproval after details of an affair on the set of the movie Stromboli leaked into the press, and for a while her career was a non-starter. Nevertheless, her star power was such that she later staged a remarkable professional comeback, winning her second and third Academy Awards in 1956 and 1974. There are few more memorable scenes in Hollywood history than the one in Alfred Hitchcock's 1959 classic North by Northwest, which sees Cary Grant chased by a weaponized crop duster. The scene may not have been made to showcase Grant's chiseled features, but it's impossible to ignore how striking he looks throughout. That goes for the rest of his filmography too. Over the course of a long and varied career, Grant showed himself to be one of Hollywood's greatest leading men. The British-born actor exuded confidence and charm, with a strong yet clean look that made him a shoo-in for everything from romance to action to comedy. However, it was with Hitchcock that he produced his finest work, and the two remain closely associated in the minds of many fans thanks to North by Northwest, as well as Suspicion, Notorious, and To Catch a Thief. Grant died in 1986 at the age of 82, and although there have been revelations that he had a dark side and rumors that he was irrationally cheap with the people in his life, he remains a celebrated star of his era. Greta Garbo lived a long life, from September 18, 1905 to April 15, 1990, but despite being a legend for the majority of the century in which she lived, she had a surprisingly short movie career. The Swedish-German actress, who was born in Stockholm, relocated to the US and became one of the most mysterious and beguiling stars of the silent age. Garbo's studio, MGM, made a huge profit on her first 3 films, and when she threatened to return to Europe as a negotiating tactic, she was rewarded rewarded with a hugely lucrative contract. It was a gamble on the studio's part, as they weren't sure that Garbo would perform well in speaking roles once talkies became the dominant medium in cinema. It was thought that having Garbo speak would ruin her allure, but audiences remained loyal, and she continued to enjoy great success during the 1930s, until people's tastes simply started to change. Garbo's final screen role was in 1941's Two-Faced Woman, which was a critical failure. After that, she retreated from the limelight, which only increased her legend. She lived out the second half of her life in New York, ignoring lucrative offers to return to Hollywood.
I just want to be alone.
A sense of traditional masculinity was key to the appeal of many male actors in the first half of the 20th century, and none epitomized that ideal as well as Gary Cooper. Cooper was born in Helena, Montana on May 7, 1901, but spent some of his formative years in England, where his parents were from. Cooper eventually returned to Los Angeles, where, intending to be an illustrator, he took on work as a film extra. However, his natural good looks, 6'3" stature, and ability in front of the camera saw him get handed larger and larger roles until he landed his big break in The Winning of Barbara Worth in 1926. The prototypical strong silent type, Cooper specialized in playing stoic men in difficult situations. He starred in two Ernest Hemingway adaptations, A Farewell to Arms in 1932 and For Whom the Bell Tolls in 1943, both war dramas. For much of his life, he was married to the socialite Veronica Balfe. Although he was known to have affairs with actresses including Clara Bow and Patricia Neal, he died in 1961 just after his 60th birthday, shortly after making his final film, The Naked Edge. Lauren Bacall was barely out of her teenage years when she became a megastar. Having started out as a model, The New Yorker made her name on Broadway before starring in To Have and Have Not, opposite the already legendary Humphrey Bogart. In one famous scene, Bacall teaches Bogart to whistle, a moment that made her an immediate favorite with audiences around the world.
You just put your lips together and blow.
Bacall was also the love of Bogart's life, with the two marrying shortly after starring in the movie together and remaining a couple until Bogart died in 1957. By that time, they had starred in several acclaimed movies together, including The Big Sleep and Dark Passage. Bacall later married actor Jason Robards in 1961, but the pair divorced shortly before the end of the decade. Her career continued into the 2000s, and at the time of her death in 2014, she was remembered for both her sultry screen persona and her acting talent, which earned her 2 Tony Awards, an Oscar nomination, and an Academy Honorary Award. Gregory Peck's defining role came in 1962 with the release of To Kill a Mockingbird, in which he portrayed lawyer Atticus Finch in the acclaimed screen adaptation of Harper Lee's 1960 novel. By then, however, Peck had been a professional actor for 2 decades, beginning on Broadway in The Morning Star and other productions when he was in his 20s. He became one of Hollywood's most beloved and versatile stars, whose chiseled looks, large frame, and captivating smile made him a conventionally attractive everyman who could take on any role. Peck's first marriage, which produced 3 children, ended in 1954 at the height of the actor's career. His second marriage to Veronique Pisani, whom he married on New Year's Eve 1955, lasted for almost 50 years before his death on June 12, 2003, at the age of 87. By then, he had become one of the most respected figures in Hollywood, known for his lack of ego and his generosity, as well as his ceaseless charity work and activism. One of the greatest screen sirens of her day, Elizabeth Taylor defined glamour and sizzling romance at the cinema for decades. The actress was born in London on February 27, 1932, to American parents and raised in Los Angeles. Taylor's mother was a theater actress who initially opposed her daughter's dream of becoming a movie star. But after Taylor passed a screen test in the early 1940s, when she was not yet 10 years old, she was on her way to Hollywood. Throughout the 1940s, 1930s, Taylor was a prominent child star, lending her talents to wholesome fare, including 1943's Lassie Come Home. However, all that was to change when she reached adulthood and established herself as one of the most seductive actresses of her era, with a knack for delivering on-screen passion. Her status as one of Hollywood's most desirable women was heightened by her love affair with Richard Burton, whom she starred opposite in the romantic costume epic Cleopatra in 1963. Taylor and Burton were married twice. First in 1964, a union which lasted a decade, and again in 1975, but the pair divorced for the final time the following year. In total, Taylor was married 8 times. She died in 2011 at the age of 79.